Hi guys, welcome back. So today in this session we were discussing about the part 2 part, that is development part, which were asked in TCS. So just second. Yeah. So here the first question is, what is the order of execution in Salesforce? Order of execution in Salesforce: first you have to fetch the data from. Second, validation. Third is validation depends on two, that is system validation and user defined validation. Third is before trigger. After that it's go for validation rule for custom plus standard. After that it's go for duplicate rule. Then save your records but does not commit yet. After that it's after triggers. Then assignment rules. Then auto response rule. Then workflow rules. And workflow is divided into many parts. That is field update, after update, system validation, then process and flow, then escalation. After that internal rules. 14th is cross object formulas. 15 is roll up summary. 16 criteria base sharing. 17 commit all DML operation on database. And 18 is post logic email. These are the order of execution in Salesforce, how your order of execution works between the in Salesforce. Yeah. Next question is, explain governor limits. So governor limits are runtime limits that enforced by the Apex runtime engine to ensure that the code does not misbehave. Governor limits are Salesforce's way of forcing you to write efficient and scalable code. So here the description is that say what are the limitations of governor limit for synchronous asynchronous. That is, total number of SQL queries issued by synchronous limit is 100 and total number of SQL queries issued by asynchronous limit is 200. So total number of records retrieved by SQL queries is 50,000 for both synchronous as well as asynchronous, and total number of records retrieved by database.query locator is 10,000 for both synchronous as well as asynchronous. Total number of SQL queries issued by both synchronous and asynchronous is 20. Total number of records retrieved by a single SQL query is 2000 for both synchronous and asynchronous, and total number of DML statements for synchronous and asynchronous is 150. Total number of records processed as a result of DML statement approval process or database.empty recycle bin is 10,000. Total stack depth for any Apex invocation that recursively fire triggers due to insert, update or delete statement is 16. Total number of callouts, HTTP requests or web service calls in a Apex transaction is 100. Maximum number of timeout for all callouts, that is HTTP requests or web service call in a transaction, is 120 seconds. Maximum number of methods with a feature and out per Apex invocation is 50 for synchronous and asynchronous. 0 in batch and future is 0 in batch and future, and 1 is queuable. Maximum number of Apex job added to the queue with system.enqueue 50 for synchronous and 1 is for asynchronous. Total number of send email methods allowed is 10, and total heap size is 6 MB for synchronous and 12 MB for asynchronous. Maximum CPU time on the Salesforce servers is 10,000 for synchronous and 60,000 for asynchronous limit. Maximum execution time for each Apex transaction is 10 minutes. Maximum number of push notification methods called per Apex transaction 100. Maximum number of push can be sent in push method call is 2000. So maximum batch size is 1 and maximum batch size is equal to 2000. Minimum batch size 1, maximum batch size 2000, and default size is 200. What are the types of common element? That is, there are that is per transaction Apex limits, per transaction certified managed Apex limit, post.com platform Apex limit, statics Apex limit, size specific Apex limit, and last is miscellaneous Apex limits. Why do we write test classes in Salesforce and what are the best practices of test classes? In Salesforce, test classes are also known as unit tests and are written to ensure that the quality and reliability of your Apex code that serve several important purposes, that is code quality assurance, change management, documentation, regression testing. Here are some best practices for writing test classes in Salesforce, that is use at the rate is state at the top of each class. Always put assert assessment which predicts result in true or false in negative and positive test. For example, integer I is equal to 0, integer j is equal to 1, system.assert equal to I comma j and system.assert not equal to 1 comma I comma j is that this would throw an error and cause your test is fail, and this would pass because it is not assert not equal to 1 comma j is the true or false. Use at the rest test setup to insert data in test class that follow all over the test classes. Use test dot start test and test dot stop date. Doing this, it will increase the governor limits of Salesforce. Use system.runas method to test functionality in user context. Do not put see all data is equal to true in test classes, otherwise use it in exceptional case, that is instead see all data is equal to true used to open up the record. Avoid hard coding IDs anywhere in test class or in Apex class also. Please make sure that each class has minimum 75% code coverage and also the main functionality has been covered. If possible, increase code up to 95%. At the rate test visible, it makes visible those methods which are private, protected in other class outside the test class. Only one test.start test and test.stop test statement can be in a method, and number of test.start test and test.stop test statement in any test class depends upon the test method. Test method should be static or no return type. Here the use of test governor limit, test.start test and test.stop test. Test.starter has several points that is used to test governor limit, executing test scenario with large data set. It marks the point where actually testing begins. All code before this method used to initialize the variable. When it begins executing, it gives fetch governor limit until stop test. And test stop test used to mark end of the test. After that, post assertion is done and it used with conjunction of start test start. What is lockout error? In Salesforce, a lockout error typically refers to a situation where users' access to their Salesforce account is temporarily restricted or locked due to multiple failed login attempts or security related issues. This lockout is a security measure to protect a user account from unauthorized access. It means that lockout error comes when a user tries to log in a Salesforce with a different username or different password is tried to log into the Salesforce, it gives the lockout error. Here are some common scenarios that can lead to a lockout error in Salesforce. That is failed login attempts, password policy violations, security token issues, IP range restrictions, and two-factor authentication. These are the scenarios that failed lockout error comes, that is failed login attempts. If a user enters an incorrect password multiple times, then it for some amount of time your Salesforce has locked, but after some amount of time it's remain unlocked and you can enter the password. If password will be correct, then it will go for the default landing page, then you can enter into Salesforce, otherwise it will not. It's a password policy violations, security token issues. If the user is required to use a security token for authentication and the token is incorrect or expired, it can lead to the login failure and potential lockout. IP range restriction and two-factor authentication. To resolve a lockout error, The user typically needs to follow these steps. That is, it should wait, then it goes for password reset, it goes for security token, after that contact your administrator, and it's important to note that the exact error message and step to resolve the lockout error may vary depending on the specific Salesforce configuration and policies implemented by the organization. Users should also follow the guidance provided by this organization, Salesforce administrator or support team when encountered lockout errors. What is reparenting? Reparenting allows you to edit the parent details of the object which is not allowed to edit in master detail relationship records cannot be reparented. However, to allow child record in master detail relationship on custom object to be reparented, enable allow reparenting option in the master detail relationship definition, which is option is enable user can change the parent of the child record. What is the deployment process in Salesforce? So there are various methods to deploy a code and configuration from one environment to another. So these are change set using the outward and inbound change set and packages. Why do we use batch class in Salesforce and write down the syntax of batch class? When you need to process a large sets of data over 50,000 records and need to bypass the synchronous execution time limits, then we should use for batch class. So here the syntax of batch class is that is global class my batch class implements database.batchable as object, and here the execute query that is global void execute database.batchable context pc list of p records, that is a list of unknown accounts that custom object plus standard that account contact lead whichever records you can be fetched can process a batch of records, and global void finish database.batchable context pc and execute any post processing operations. Types of exception in detail. There's various types of exceptions in Salesforce, that is DML exceptions. DML exception has three parts, that is required field missing, mixed DML operation error and invalid data, and system.final exception has two parts. One part, there is record is read only, and third is list exception, fourth null pointer exception, fifth is the query exception, fifth has two parts, that is no rows for assignment and system.query exception, non-selective query against large object type. Sixth is x object exception. Six has one part, that is s object row were retrieved via SQL without querying. Seventh is limit exception. Seventh has three parts, that is too many SQL queries 101 error, too many DML of statement 151, apex CPU time limit exceeds, so, and too many query rows. 8 is string exception. 9 is JSON exception. 9.1 is apex type unsupported in JSON object. 10th unexpected exception. 11th is flow exception. First is DML exception. DML exception has three parts, that is required field missing. First we'll discuss about required field missing, that is throw the system.dml exception inserts a field first row. First exception on row, that is required field missing exception. Then how it comes, that is your code like this, that is when you write a code try count is equal to new contact, count is equal to new contact, contact first name abhi insert count. In the contact object, here the first name is not mandatory but last name is mandatory when you are creating a new contact. So here you will not able to you are not using the last name, here you are using first name which is non-mandatory, and last name is mandatory which where you were not using. So solution is include all record before performing any DML operation, that is insert, that include all the mandatory details which we are using for that custom plus standard object. Mixed DML operation here. A mixed DML operation error comes when you try to perform DML operation on a setup on non-setup object in a single transaction. It will give you system.tml exception insertion field, first action on row 0, first error, mixed TML operation error. What do you mean by setup or non-setup object? Non-setup objects are those objects which can be standard plus custom, like account, contact, lead, custom as well, hospital, Apollo, like this, hospital underscore underscore C, that like this. It's a custom object. And setup objects are like page layout, users, uh, and valid permission sets. These are setup objects. 1.3 is invalid data. System.dml exception instance of field, first exception on row 0 with ID. First error, invalid field for insert update, cannot specify ID and insert call. This issue comes while inserting a same record in a trigger. Don't include ID while inserting a record. This here the solution comes when this error comes. So what are the solution to avoid this invalid data? That don't include any IDs while inserting the record. If you include this ID, including any hard-coded ID, then this error already comes when you try to perform another record. System.final exception. Record is read-only. System.final exception record is a read-only. Error comes when you are trying to edit a triggered out new record in after insert and update trigger. The record are read-only in that context as they have been written but not committed to the database. So what are the solution to avoid the system.final exception? That update record in before event or query record before updating it from the database. Then this error will not come. List exception. Any problem with a list, such as attempting to access an index that is out of bounds, will throw system.list exception. That is list of account that is select ID from accounts where name is equal to away system.debug, and you can debug it. So solution is, when this error comes, what are the solution to avoid this? The use size function to avoid the list outbound message. Null pointer exception. Any problem with dereferencing null, such as in the following code, that is string as boolean as dot contains a we catch null pointer exception, it will throw the system.null pointer exception attempt to dereference a null pointer error. So what are the solution to avoid the null pointer exception? Is avoid memory or assign value before using the object. Query exception. Any problem with SQL query, such as assigning a query that returns no record or more than one record to a single S object variable, that is no rows for assignment. Here example system.query has list no rows assignment, that is account is select name from account where name is going to null, and catch and system.debug is equal to exception is. So what are the solution to avoid this query? FCC use list to avoid the issue, this issue. System.query exception, that is non-selective query against large object type. If you query records on object that returns more than 20,000 records and without query filters, that it's possible you will receive the error. System.query exception non-selective query against large object type. As object exception. As object rows were retrieved by a SQL query without querying. Below the example of as object exception is, there is my select ID from my hospital system.debug a.name catch itna. Include field in a SQL query. This error comes because you are not including any field, you including only ID in the SQL query. That's why as object exception will come. So include all field in a SQL query which were used. Limit exception. In Salesforce, we cannot encounter the Salesforce governor limit. A governor limit has been exceeded. This exception cannot be caught. This is a hard limit means you can't increase it by contacting Salesforce support. That is too many SQL queries 101 error. This means we can only have up to 100 SQL in a single context. This is a hard limit, which means you can't increase it by the contacting Salesforce support. For example, account for loop account acc is equal to trigger.name for contact con select id from contact where account id is equal to none. Too many DML statement. You cannot perform more than 150 DML statement in one execution. For account acc list account inserting a new account, that is update acc new solution. So what you need to do, you need to create a list of all the records and insert that list using the DML statement. In this way you can insert multiple records only in one DML statement. Apex CPU time limit exceeded. Salesforce CPU time limits users to 10 seconds for synchronous transaction, 60 seconds for asynchronous processing. The Apex CPU time limit exceeds. Error means your transaction is taking too long and can't be completed. Too many queries rows. You will get limit exception too many query rows 5001 error when your query will return more than 50,000 records. Solution: use limit and filter in your SQL query, then it will not give any too many query rows. String exception: any problem with a string such as a string that is exceeding your heap size. Here example of system.string exception invalid id. The solution isn't a valid id, use null instead. JSON exception: any problem with JSON serialization and deserialization operations. For more information, see the methods that system.json parser and system.json generator. Unaccepted Unexpected exception: a non-recoverable internal error within Salesforce had occurred. This exception causes execution to halt. If necessary, contact Salesforce customer support for more information. Solution: system.unaccepted exception is usually followed by error message. Code should handle the condition that can cause this exception and to prevent it in advance, but cannot be handled once it is generated. Error message is usually self-descriptive, but if it has a Salesforce error code, please contact your salesforce.com support. Explain the lifecycle hooks in LWC. Lightning Web Company had their own lifecycle managed by the Salesforce framework. The framework creates components, inserted into the DOM, renders them, and remove from the DOM. Then after that, it removes from the DOM. It also monitors component for property changes. So when a RWC created, constructor is invoked, which is similar to the init method in Aura component. Once change is flow on constructor is from parent to child, then it is inserted into a DOM. Then connected callback is whenever then component is rendering. Render it is used to override the functionality of LWC. Rendered callback it is called once component is rendered and pass it to child loop parent. Error callback: whenever a component throw error, it will catch error object. Disconnected callback: when a component is removed from DOM, disconnected callback is used in PubSub model. What are the decorators available in LWC and its use? It is used to expose a variable or function publicly and make properties reactive. At the rate track, it is used to make a variable private but reactive. Track property are also called a private reactive properties. At the rate wire, to read Salesforce data, Lightning Web Component use a reactive wire service. When the wire service provisions data, the component re-renders Components use @wire in their JavaScript class to specify a wire adapter or an apex method. Difference between a wire and imperative wire in LWC. Wire enables the real-time retrieval of data from the server side. Whenever the data changes on the server, the wire automatically updates the data in the LWC. And on the other hand, imperative calls are used to retrieve the data from the server side only when needed, and the data is not updated automatically. Do you know some SLDS classes? Yes, that is SLDS button, SLDS text heading large, SLDS form, SLDS input, SLDS text align center, SLDS text color, SLDS grid, SLDS card, SLDS tabs, SLDS model, SLDS icon, SLDS spinner, and SLDS top down trigger, SLDS notify, SLDS is active, and SLDS hidden. These are the some SLDS classes which were used in your LWC component while making the HTML file. What is Lightning Data Service in LWC? It allows developer to perform crude operations such as create, read, update, and delete without writing a single line of Apex code. There are three components that are built on Lightning Data Service: is Lightning Record View Form, Lightning Record Edit Form, and Lightning Record Form. What is the Lightning Message Service in LWC? Lightning Message Service (LMS) allow you to communicate between Visual Force and Lightning components or an LWC both on any Lightning page. LMS API allows you to publish message throughout the Lightning experience and subscribe the same message anywhere within a Lightning page. Write a trigger to create contacts based on number of contacts field on account object while account record save. Here the trigger can be trigger on account save on account, that is after insert and after update. Then you can list a record, list a contact of record, then use for loop in account. After that map it and create a specified number of contacts for that account, and here the codes comes and you can see that. Look. So thank you guys, please hit like and subscribe my channel. If any query comes, then please write down in comment box. I will be able to answer your questions. Thank you.